Mr. Ramsey, did you kill John Bonet?
No, I did not.
Mrs. Ramsey, did you kill your daughter?
No, I did not kill my daughter.
When I found her, it was a rush of relief. And then, of course, within moments, I realized that she probably was dead.
Everyone looks at the interview of Burke and thinks, why is this young man smiling?
This is the only case where I think I have fundamentally turned as much as I have, thinking probably to no way.
A rush of relief at what should be the most horrifying moment of a person's life. A question about a smile that even the show itself won't answer definitively. And a legal analyst declaring he completely changed his mind over one tiny trace of DNA. Today, we take apart all three. I'm Marcus Wren, creator of the Tell Index, a 50-signal system for analyzing statements and behavior in criminal cases. Today's video breaks down a special ABC News Nightline report where Burke Ramsey, John Bonet's brother, spoke publicly for the first time after 20 years of silence. Subscribe if you want more analysis like this.
Did you hit your sister over the head with a baseball bat or a flashlight?
Absolutely not.
Burke says he stayed in bed for hours as dozens of investigators and loved ones swarmed the house.
Critics would say you weren't curious because you already knew. He didn't have to get up and go check because he knew exactly what had happened.
I mean, I didn't know if there's some bad guy downstairs and my dad was chasing off with a gun.
Burke says he stayed in bed for hours while dozens of investigators and loved ones swarmed the house searching for his sister. The segment raises the counter-argument itself. Critics would say he wasn't curious because he already knew what had happened, so he didn't need to get up and check. This is code C9, no proactive action commensurate with the level of urgency when a family member is believed to be missing or kidnapped. Burke offers his own explanation right in this same clip. He was afraid there might be a bad guy downstairs his dad was chasing off. Cross-referencing other interviews from the same period, Burke told Entertainment, "Tonight he tends to avoid conflict and that part of me doesn't want to know what's going on," matching Dr. Phil's own description of him as a private, socially uncomfortable person. A 9-year-old freezing in his room out of fear rather than running out into a chaotic night is a well-documented psychological response. This is precisely the innocent explanation code C9 itself specifies. One detail worth noting doesn't appear in this clip at all. According to independent behavioral analysts, the account Burke gave Dr. Phil in 2016, that his mother burst into his room in a panic, crying, "Where's my baby? Where's my baby?" differs from what he told a psychologist at age 9, the account closest in time to the incident itself, in which he said it was his father who came in to tell him, and that he only heard his mother crying from downstairs while alone in his room. This isn't proof of guilt, but it is a mismatch between two tellings 20 years apart of the exact opening detail of that entire morning. Worth noting, not worth ignoring.
Everyone looks at the interview of Burke and thinks, why is this young man smiling?
I don't see a smile as much as I see an uncomfortable facial expression. But I don't see that as smile, happy smile. I see that as uncomfortable guy.
The segment asks the question millions of viewers asked when watching Burke's Dr. Phil interview. Why does he smile while discussing his sister's murder? The narration answers its own question, calling it not really a smile, but an uncomfortable expression. This is code B4. A fleeting smile appearing in a way that doesn't match the seriousness of the context. Behavioral experts at the time didn't agree on how to read this. Body language expert Jan Hargrave, analyzing the interview directly, called it a forced smile, reflecting anxiety hidden behind a pleasant facade. But she also explicitly said she wasn't implying he was lying. On the other side, body language expert Dr. Lillian Glass called it flatly duping delight, the exact code being analyzed here, and cross-referenced it against Burke also smiling in his childhood police interview tape while describing his mother's grief. Dr. Phil himself, the one who actually conducted the interview, pushed back on both readings, insisting it was simply the nervous smile of a private, socially awkward person, comparing the scrutiny Burke faced to the criticism Patsy Ramsey herself received for not grieving the right way in the weeks after her daughter's death. In other words, even among professional behavioral analysts, this signal was read at least 3 different ways by 3 credentialed people. Not the settled conclusion this segment's framing implies.
But soon, John Ramsey, JonBenét's father, found her lifeless body in the basement, a moment he told me about in 2012.
When I found her, it was a rush of relief. And then, of course, within moments, I realized that she probably was dead. But she was back in my arms.
He describes the moment he found his daughter dead in the basement using the phrase, a rush of relief, before adding that within moments he realized she was probably dead. This is code B3, checking whether the emotional word chosen logically and temporally matches the content of the story being told. Relief is a positive valence word, typically used when finding someone alive, not when finding a body. Cross-referencing the case file, this detail doesn't stand alone. Detective Linda Arndt, the only officer at the Ramsey home for most of that morning, described John's initial demeanor to ABC News as cordial, and noted that he took time to read his mail while his daughter was believed to have been kidnapped. Around 1 p.m., when Arndt asked John and a family friend to search the house again, he went straight to the basement, opened a locked room, a wine cellar, and found the body within a short time, something Arndt later described as unusual, calling it almost a straight line to the exact spot. He then immediately carried the body upstairs, permanently contaminating a scene the forensic team hadn't yet processed. It's only fair to note the other side. John has repeatedly explained that he was simply searching top to bottom in a logical order, that finding her was pure chance, and that carrying her up was a panicked parental reflex, not a calculated act. An entirely plausible psychological explanation for someone who had just witnessed the most horrifying scene of his life. But the word relief itself, chosen to describe that moment, set alongside the account of the one officer who witnessed the entire morning unfold, is a mismatch worth noting, not a detail to wave away.
JonBenet was a pedophile's dream come true.
Lou Smith, the late detective who was brought in by the Boulder District Attorney's Office to conduct an independent investigation, believed a sexual predator killed JonBenet.
I believe he brought her down to the farthest, deepest part of that basement and did very brutal things to her.
Smith uncovered evidence that had reportedly been overlooked by the Boulder police. A broken window where the killer could have entered. A footprint, marks on JonBenet indicative of a stun gun.
This segment presents Lou Smith's theory almost as an overlooked discovery, without raising further questions about how solid it is. Cross-referencing the case file, both central details of this theory were later disputed by other investigators using concrete evidence. The spiderweb spanning the broken basement window was documented as still intact at the scene, making it nearly impossible for an adult to have climbed through without tearing it, and no unfamiliar footprints were found in the snow outside leading to the house. As for the suspected stun gun marks, former lead investigator James Kolar and several forensic physicians later demonstrated that the evenly spaced abrasions on the victim's body matched precisely with the joints on the track of a toy train set found in the house, not a sign of an electrical weapon brought in from outside.
A re-examination of the DNA evidence using new technology found an unidentified male's DNA on JonBenet's underpants, essentially clearing the Ramsey family.
This is the only case where I think I have fundamentally turned as much as I have, thinking probably to no way over the course of an intense investigation.
Both lines here, essentially clearing and fundamentally turned from probably to no way, are presented as something close to a decisive answer to who killed JonBenet. cross-referencing the public record shows a far more complicated picture. The 2008 exoneration letter from then-District Attorney Mary Lacy was heavily criticized by the investigative community itself. In 2016, her successor, District Attorney Stan Garnett, publicly stated that decision had no legal binding value and should never have been written the way it was. The DNA in question is a minuscule amount of touch, DNA, and many forensic experts argue it could plausibly be transferred DNA from the manufacturing or packaging process of the garment itself, not necessarily the killer's. Boulder police themselves still classify this as an open homicide case and have not formally ruled out any theory involving someone in the household. Worth saying plainly here only once in this video, nothing in the 4 cross-references above proves who killed John Ramsey, and the whole family has been cleared by DNA evidence since 2008. A 9-year-old freezing in fear, a father choosing the wrong word to describe the most horrifying moment of his life, a smile read 3 different ways by 3 different experts, all of this can plausibly be the product of real psychological trauma, not necessarily a sign of a lie. What stands out in this video is how a television segment packages a chaotic, layered, contradiction-filled morning into a tidy story with a beginning, a climax, and something close to a definitive ending, while the actual case file, 20 years on, still hasn't closed at all. A word like relief at exactly the most tragic moment. A smile read 3 different ways by 3 experts. An exoneration the next district attorney himself called legally meaningless. Where do you think the line is between real psychological trauma and a story polished a little too smoothly for television? Leave a comment below. I read all of them. Subscribe so you don't miss the next analysis in this case series.